Back in the day, television networks would often rely on programming blocks to distinguish themselves from their competitors. By curating shows that fit together, they could easily brand the concept to viewers and quickly instill loyalty. Are you looking for family programming? Well, head on over to ABC for TGIF. Are you in the mood for some sitcoms? Well, then check out NBC's Must-See TV. Do you hate yourself and your family and want them to suffer? Well, then Friday nights at the CBS Block Party is for you. But when you were a kid, there were no programming blocks that hit quite like the ones on Saturday mornings. There was Fox Kids, which had X-Men and Power Rangers. Kids WB had Animaniacs and Pokemon. There was CBS Kids, which didn't have anything I actually liked, but I just want an excuse to shoehorn in an out-of-context clip from the Secret of the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House game show.
Hillary Clinton, Jackie Kennedy, Nancy Reagan, Barbara Bush.
First Lady?
Yeah!
Every Saturday morning, all the networks went to war with each other to see who would earn my undivided attention. And for a couple years, there was a clear winner, as I constantly found myself enthralled with Disney's One Saturday Morning. I wasn't alone. One Saturday Morning is a programming block that is viewed so fondly by so many. Except for maybe the people who took them to court. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's flash back to the 90s. Disney had recently acquired ABC and was looking to make a dent in Saturday mornings. Like all networks, ABC had Saturday morning kids programming, but they were a step behind Fox and the WB. It was stiff competition. I mean, how do you beat this?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Starting right now, see Lou Bega live on the Kids WB Snow Jam with brand new shows all morning, including 3 new Pokemon. A little bit of Batman dropping in.
Disney actually hired a producer from the WB named Peter Hastings to be in charge of the new Saturday morning block. Hastings had already worked in kids television on shows like Animaniacs and relished the opportunity to create his own thing. Together with another producer named Prudence Fenton, they created the concept of Disney's One Saturday Morning. Hastings and Fenton worked hard to ensure that their block would be unique and stand out from their competitors. Aside from being visually distinct, One Saturday Morning was conceived of as a 3-hour block that flowed seamlessly from one segment to the next. At launch, One Saturday Morning would only feature 3 shows: Recess, Pepper Ann, and Disney's Doug, which is basically just that Gadira meme. Skunky Beaumont isn't real! Now obviously having just those shows in a 3-hour block wasn't gonna cut it, but Hastings had the idea to use recurring interstitials. These interstitials would bridge the gaps between the programming and commercials and help brand One Saturday Morning. For the initial run, the interstitials included Man on the Street interviewer Manny the Uncanny, the silent physical comedy of The Monkey Boys, Robin Williams reprising his role as the genie from Aladdin for the educational Great Minds Think for Themselves shorts, and the subject of today's video, Mrs. Munger's class.
Okay, class. Class? Word problem.
Oh. Yay.
Simmer? Word problem. Feng-Shi pulls a rickshaw filled with a dozen apples. Along comes Satoshi with a bucket of oranges, 10 in all, minus the one he gave to Consuela. When they meet, how many do they have altogether? Theodore?
Do
you have the answer?
No.
Lance swallowed a fly.
I ilfe ixe.
Lance, do you need to visit the nurse?
One!
Simmer? Word problem. Aww. Come on now. Feng-Shi has a dozen apples in the rickshaw. Satoshi has 10 minus 1 in his bucket. Together they have...
Cookie!
Phoebe said cookie.
Everyone say grace.
Grace! Cut it out!
Simmer? Who has the answer? Mahout.
What?
To the question.
What?
The answer.
What?
To the question.
What?
12 plus 10 minus 1 equals what, class?
21!
Oh, for gum's sake.
The shorts were all 90 seconds and dealt with the titular Mrs. Munger attempting to get her class to simmer and learn something. Because the episodes were so short, all the students were given a well-defined trait to easily characterize them. Much like a boy band or pro wrestling in the 90s, everyone needed a gimmick. Dawn was the teacher's pet, Sissy was the tattletale, Gordon was a class clown, Amanda was a singer, Yvonne was a feminist, George and George were not twins, Lance spoke in pig Latin for some reason, Karen was obsessed with death, Rock was weird, Theodore was dumb, Phoebe was weird and dumb, Grace was an overweight girl everyone hated for some reason, and Artie? Well, I couldn't figure him out. What's your deal, man? There was also Mahout, whose gimmick was the same as Stone Cold Steve Austin in 2002.
What?
Peter Hastings created the show and actually voiced Mrs. Munger himself, while an animator named Tim Maloney was brought on to direct the shorts. The photos of the kids on the show were actually real, and came from the 1975 Woodbridge Middle School yearbook from Woodbridge, Virginia. A gentleman named Eric Mahadi, who helped work on the show in the beginning, offered up his own yearbook to the creators. Animators took his classmates' photos and altered them to make them characters on the show. They even snuck Mahadi onto the show, as it was his photo that was the basis for Mahout. Mrs. Munger's class was immensely popular right away. It was a huge part of the advertising campaign for One Saturday Morning, and was the most viewed part of the One Saturday Morning webpage. The characters even appeared on other ABC programming like TGIF, and the short-lived Monday Night Football pre-show Monday Night Blast. That short featured cameo appearances from John Elway and noted Everclear super fanatic Drew Bledsoe. The only footage of the short is unfinished, but it's still worth watching Mrs. Munger's stilted interaction with noted leather enthusiast Chris Berman.
Right now, let's go back to that loquacious Christopher Berman.
At this point, I want to briefly pause and give a shout out to a YouTuber whose name will probably mispronounce, named Gokai Orange. I thought the NFL clip was lost media, but by watching their video of Mrs. Munger's class, I was able to find the source. When you're done with this video, I highly recommend checking out their video of Mrs. Munger's class, as they're going far deeper into this than I was able to. I'll put a link in the description. Now back to the show. The Mrs. Munger shorts proved so popular that ABC commissioned a pilot for a show they hoped would succeed on prime time. The Munger pilot took the show and greatly expanded it. There are still the classroom segments, but the show mainly follows Mrs. Munger and her students in the real world. By this point, the shorts were already well into their second season, and the network was thrilled with the product. It certainly seemed like a full-length show was a slam dunk. Or it did, until Disney got hit with a lawsuit.
What?
A lawsuit.
What?
A lawsuit.
What?
They got sued, and it's all your fault, Mahout. You see, not everyone from Woodbridge Middle School was thrilled that their childhood photos were being used on television, and so they sued Disney for damages. There were 6 plaintiffs who all had different gripes with the program. Teddy Falch, Michael Blevins, Kathleen Forsman, Susie Sparks, Michael Link, and Edward Jackson. Teddy was the inspiration for Theodore and Grace, and was horrified by the fact that on the show Theodore was portrayed as dumb. As a child, he'd spent time in a slow learners class, and the show brought up bad memories. Michael Blevins, who was the inspiration for Rock, was upset that the show altered his appearance to make him grotesque. Kathleen Forsman was the inspiration for the titular Mrs. Munger, and alleged that she was essentially tricked into signing over her likeness rights. She claimed she was only paid $1,000 and was told everyone else had already agreed to be on the show. The complaints of Susie Sparks was never made public, nor was her character. I did some digging and I can't be sure, but I really think that she was the inspiration for Sissy. The 2 most damning allegations came from Michael Link and Edward Jackson, who both alleged the show depicted them in a racist manner. Link was the inspiration for Lance, and felt that the show committed racism by taunting his character with karate chops and racial epitaphs. Okay, so the karate chop thing did happen on the show, but it was Lance himself who randomly chopped his desk in half once. I have no idea where the claims of racial epitaphs being said to Lance on the show came from, unless I've been watching the wrong show this whole time. Still, the claims of Edward Jackson were far more severe than those of his classmates. Jackson was the inspiration for the character of Gordon, and Jackson went as far as to compare his character to both minstrel shows and Buckwheat from Little Rascals. Of all the plaintiffs, Jackson was far and away the most angry. He was quoted in articles as saying, "It just makes you want to punch the wall, knowing somebody could get away with this." I don't feel qualified to judge the merits of Jackson's suit, so in the interest of fairness, here are some clips of Gordon.
Somebody stinks. Lower the oxygen masks. Hey, Rock, that baboon looks like your cousin. Looks like an elephant left something behind. Grace could put mustard on us and have us for lunch. You're the turkey. He went to see the fog around your brain. Oh, late.
The plaintiffs publicly blamed Eric Mahadi and said he had given over his yearbook in order to intentionally humiliate his former classmates. The lawsuit demanded financial compensation for damages, a public apology, and the cancellation of the program. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as within a week of the lawsuit going public, Mrs. Munger's class was dismissed. Disney spokesman Ken Green was quoted as saying, "Because it apparently bothers some people, and because from a creative standpoint that it isn't that important to the entire Saturday show, we felt the best case would be to simply delete it from the Saturday lineup." There's no official story on the result of the lawsuit, but from what I was able to figure out, the plaintiffs did get a paycheck from Disney. Tim Maloney was highly critical of the lawsuit. Not just because he found some of the claims to be without merit, but he also thought the plaintiffs were short-sighted. Ultimately, he put the blame on the Disney legal department for not doing their due diligence, but pointed out that the plaintiffs would have probably ended up making more money if they had just negotiated an agreement that kept Mrs. Munger's class on the air and got them residuals. The team behind Mrs. Munger's class continued working at Disney and created a spiritual sequel called Centerville. They took what they were already working on in the pilot and tried to adapt it to the Saturday morning shorts. Centerville has the same visual style as Mrs. Munger's class, but goes about it in a different way. Episodes take place in the same recurring locations and are all done in rhythm to a backing track. It's kinda hard to explain, so I better just show you.
Give me what to eat or you're a big leech.
Hey, get out!
You're a big leech.
Get out!
I am out, you big snout. You're a big leech.
It's fine, I guess. Mrs. Munger's Class lasted 2 seasons before its abrupt end, but Disney One Saturday Morning continued on. For a brief moment, they were the kings of Saturday morning, as they were able to knock Fox Kids and Kids WB off the mountain. But like all great empires, they were destined to fall. One Saturday Morning's reign at the top was short-lived, but ultimately it didn't matter, as the whole concept was on borrowed time. As the years marched on, networks just stopped caring about Saturday morning kids shows. One by one, all the great Saturday morning blocks fell, only to be replaced by hyper-specific paid local programming. But the spirit of Saturday morning lives inside all of us. It lives in those moments we sat in our pajamas on that one Saturday morning, eating a bowl of cereal and laughing at Mrs. Munger's Class. They can take away our cartoons, but they can never take away our memories.
What?
You know what? F you, Mahout. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting like and subscribe to see the rest of the stuff I make. And hey, in the comments, let me know your memories of Mrs. Munger's Class. And if you think I was too hard on Mahout, well, that's your business, man.